Hello, everyone. Welcome to this class on Marvelous Designer. This is the first class on Marvelous Designer that we have using Marvelous Designer 12. And there's some features in there that I thought were very, very interesting that I really wanted to have a chance to explore with you in the context of a class. In Marvelous Designer 12, I've seen updates to the retopology tool. They've also made the shortcuts Marvelous Designer 12 a little bit easier to see. But the feature that I am particularly interested in that they have released with Marvelous Designer 12 is the style line editing, which allows us to edit 3D patterns, or rather to edit patterns directly within the 3D window, which I think is very, very interesting because one of the hardest things with Marvelous Designer is to edit a pattern within the 2D window and to be expected to understand how that will afterward convert into a 3D garment there. And so style line editing seems to be an answer to that. So I'm very, very happy to see that as a feature. I think it's very, very exciting. At the time of recording, I've had the chance to play with it a little bit, not too much, because I kind of wanted to discover this tool with you here. So I have done a few tests myself to see how it works and to see whether it's something that is worthwhile to use. And I'm very happy to say that I think it is one of the best features of Marvelous Designer that I have seen released in a while there. Certainly Marvelous Designer 11, I wasn't all that fond of it, so we don't even have any classes on Studio related to Marvelous Designer 11. But Marvelous Designer 12, I think that particular style line editing feature there for me is well worth the upgrade. So let's dive really deep into that. So to do that today, the idea is very simple. We're not going to work from a garment that, or rather a concept that already exists and that we want to match 100%. We're just going to freestyle and kind of build the garment together there. We're not going to do anything too complicated. We're just going to use the software as it is out of the box. And we're just going to have some fun to explore how these different new features work there. So I've already pinned here on Pinterest a particular quote, perhaps, that I kind of want to build with you. So we'll build something that is kind of like this, and a little bit kind of all of these other ones here that are also suggested here. So there's no particular one code in here that I want to build. I just want to build something that kind of looks like this, has a little bit of this style. So we'll also take this particular opportunity that we have right now to also explore a little bit how to just freestyle a garment within Marvelous Designer, not necessarily try to go anywhere in particular, just to let our own creativity take us somewhere. So as you can see, I have a lot of letter codes here that all look very, very interesting. It's funny because I never even thought of actually shopping on Pinterest for a code for myself, but recently someone actually mentioned that, and it's like, yeah, actually that wouldn't be a bad idea here. And of course, Pinterest is quite used by a lot of people for shopping. And now that I think about it, there's quite a lot of codes here that I find look actually extremely beautiful and that I probably would like to buy for myself. You know, like this looks really nice. This looks really good too, and so does this particular coat here. And now that I start looking at Pinterest through the angle of shopping, this is getting a little bit dangerous for me. But so for today, we'll put shopping aside for sure. We'll just try to build something that kind of has a little bit of the style of everything that we are looking at here. I don't know how far we'll actually create this particular garment together there. The goal really is to first do a little bit of freestyle exploration within Marvelous Designer, see how we can do that. How can we just start to have a little bit of fun, and of course to explore mostly the style line editing features of Marvelous Designer. So I'm just going to go ahead here, start the software, and let's go to town on this. So I have the software here that's ready to go. This is stock Marvelous Designer 12. I believe I may have changed a shortcut or two here and there, but really not that much. This is pretty much out of the box, the software there. So we'll talk also about shortcut customization. The fact that I really didn't want to customize too many shortcuts ahead of time because I wanted to go through these with you. So we have our style line editing buttons that are right here, but there aren't any shortcuts for these that I can see here by default. So we'll probably also assign a few shortcuts to different functions here or there. It's going to be also a little bit of a refresher as to how to go about using Mars Designer out of the box as we how do we get started with this particular software. So let's go ahead here then, and within our library here on the left, let's go within avatar, and let's just use the female V2 stock avatar here as a starting point for our garment. I have changed my shortcuts within Marvelous Designer so that they are the same as with Maya because it just feels comfortable for me. Of course, the type of navigation that you use, you can set that the first time that you launch Mars Designer, and you can set that to whatever feels comfortable to you. And also perhaps interesting to note here that I am working with centimeters. So there too, if you're starting Marvelous Designer for the first time, you have a little dialog box that shows up, asks you what is the navigation mode that you would like to use, whether the default one, the Maya one, 3ds Max one, and also what is the default unit that you would like to work in. So if you're creating character art for video games or for VFX, working in centimeters is definitely the way to go there. Very, very simple. Essentially, we want to do is to start building a coat over this particular avatar. And as we said, we're not working from a particular concept here. So we're just going to freestyle here. And that gives you a little bit of a chance to see how can we freestyle things within Marvelous Designer, because I think that it is very interesting to do that. Sometimes, if you have an evening that is free and you just want to have some fun, you don't necessarily need to always work from a predefined concept. Sometimes freestyling is a way to just let your creativity run wild and take you somewhere that you otherwise would not go into. So we'll just create a rectangle here for the front of the coat. For the back of the coat, we'll sew these together and we will simply build our garment from there. So here I'm just going to press S within our 2D pattern window to create a rectangle. So let's just go ahead, let's create a rectangle here. I'm going to create here my rectangle on only one side of the body, as you can see. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to press Z within our 2D pattern window so that we can select edges. And I'm going to select the edge here that is near the center line of the character. I'm going to right click on it, and we are going to do unfold symmetric editing with sewing. We can take that here, just perhaps move it so that it's nice and centered within our 2D window. Within our 3D window then, we'll simply press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V to duplicate this particular pattern towards the back of the character so that we have both a front and a back panel for our coat. We just press W here to make sure that I am a rather Q here. Select move here. I'm just going to grab this particular panel, move it a little bit towards the back. This is our back panel. Let's take it. Let's move it to the side. And then with the back panel selected, let's do a right click on it within our 3D window, and let's do a flip normal on this. We could set a shortcut for that, of course. By the way, if you are new to Marvelous Designer 12, the other feature that's kind of interesting, not as much as the style line editing, but still is interesting, is if you click on any of these arrows here. Now, this is a new feature of Marvelous Designer 11, I believe, that all these panels are now modular. So this is very similar to Blender, in fact, where every panel that you have everywhere can be anything that you want it to be, really. This was a feature of Marvelous Designer 11, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing that's interesting that they have added within Marvelous Designer 12 is that you can click on, let's say, the property editor that is right here and go within hotkey list. Unfortunately, I haven't found a way here to expose some of the functions that do not have hotkeys yet. So that would be fun if that was there, but it's not there. But at least we can see what are the shortcuts that are already applied somewhere. And we can actually this can serve as a nice refresher as to what are the default shortcuts of Marvelous Designer, what can we click on. I am actually interested right now to just wonder if there is a way to, if we do customize our shortcuts, if they do show up within the list that is here. Because if we look anywhere in here, we won't actually find a flip normal here because there is no default shortcut there. But I'm curious if I apply a shortcut to flip normal, whether that will show up in one of these drop downs that is here. So that would be, where would that even be to begin with? In fact, it would probably be within perhaps within the 3D window, perhaps within pattern. I'm not actually sure. I guess we'll see. We'll see if it shows up anywhere, but we certainly do not have a flip normal in here anywhere. And I believe we don't have that within the 2D window either, right? So we do not anywhere. So cool, okay. Yeah, let's just give this a try. This is a class where this will be a very, very free-form style class, just like the garment that we will build together here. So let's go to settings, preferences. Let's go to preferences. Let's go to hotkeys. Rather, let's go to shortcuts. And in here, if I do Alt N, which is actually what I would like to assign, we don't have anything assigned to that. So that's really wonderful. So I'm going to apply that on the flip normals. Of course, you could apply anything to anything, really. The moment that a shortcut is free, you're free to apply that on anything that you want, of course. But in this case here, Alt N feels good to me. So okay, let's go for flip normal here. So we have here shortcut key. There is nothing applied to that. Let's go ahead and apply Alt N as a shortcut. Let's see here. There you go. That's going to be applied as our flip normal shortcut. If I do Alt N here, there it is. Life is good. Let's click close. Now, what I wanted to see was whether it would actually show up here within this list, and to make sure that this list is not only the default shortcuts, because that would be a major oversight if that was only the default shortcuts of Marvelous Designer that would show up in here. So looking through here, I cannot find my Alt N shortcut here within a 3D window. We go within pattern, select move. We have these default buttons that are there, move tool. Yeah, I cannot actually find the Alt N shortcut I have just applied here. I'm actually gonna even go so far as restart Marvelous Designer, because this seems like an oversight. If our custom shortcuts do not show up in here, that's a bit of an oversight, unfortunately, because I really like this feature, just looking at a hotkey list, but If all we see is the default shortcuts in Marvelous Designer, that's not great here. So I'm actually just gonna save this out, see if I restart Marvelous Designer, if the shortcut that I have just applied shows up somewhere. So I restarted Marvelous Designer. If I right click on a pattern here, our flip normal here is still applied as a shortcut. And within our hotkey list here, within both our 2D window, we'll go to properties here. I cannot see flip normal anywhere. So that's a bit of an oversight. That kind of sucks. It makes the usage of this particular hotkey list a little bit limited. So that kind of sucks. There's nothing else I can really say about that. Oh well. This was a nice feature, but hey, maybe in future versions, future updates, maybe they will change that to something better. Anyway, I just wanted to give that a try to see what we could get out of that particular feature. There's also they've added Mars Designer 12 to animation layers, which I think is really cool. That's going to be a topic for another class, perhaps. We're not going to play around with that yet, but I'm very happy to see that they have expanded the features that are available within the animation tab of Mars Designer, because it always felt like a tab that was there as a bit of a placeholder for more interesting things. And so they have added those animation layers, which means we can do multiple animations for a particular garment, blend them together, these sorts of things. That is fantastic. So as far as I'm concerned, Mars Designer 12 is a very cool update to Marvelous Designer, and I can't wait to delve into those animation layers. But again, that will be a topic for a future class. Okay, so we wanted to mostly focus today on the style line editing features of Marvelous Designer 12 and every other little quality of life improvements that they have made in this. I'm not gonna lie, okay, Marvelous Designer 11 was a big disappointment for me. Because it was not even possible within Marvelous Designer 11, or at least within the original versions of the software. Perhaps they have patched that in later versions. I haven't actually tried. But when I did give Marvelous Designer 11 a try, it was not even possible within the 3D window to press M to go within to add a free sewing line somewhere, and to be able to either edit our free sewing line within the 2D window or within the 3D window. It was not even possible to do that. Um, and in fact, it was even impossible to get to free sewing within the 3D window through a shortcut, as weird as that sound. It's almost as if when you pressed M, it would allow you to go within free sewing mode within the 2D window, but you could not do it within the 3D window, as weird as that sounds. And so Mars Designer 11 was a huge disappointment for me. It really was. But Mars Designer 12, it just works the way that it's supposed to. You press M within the 3D window or the 2D window, it doesn't matter. And here we go, you are within free sewing mode. And I find that absolutely cool. The only difference here, it's a very minor thing, but if you're actually creating a free sewing within the 3D window, you actually have to double click twice to end your free sewing on the first part of your garment. And then we can do the same thing on the second part of the garment here. So let's just snap it until it's at the proper height here. So we have to double click to end our free sewing. Whereas if we do it within the 2D window, we just had to click once. That's a kind of odd difference in behavior between the 3D window and the 2D window, but it's not the end of the world really. We can get used to that fairly quickly here. Then of course we can press B to edit our sewing afterward if I want it to be perhaps a little bit higher here. And I can do the same thing on this side here. So it works the way that it is supposed to, which I think is really, really fantastic. Marvelous Designer 12 is a breath of fresh air. Let's go here, add another free sewing here to the top so that we can sew the double click here to finish our sewing line. Let me do that again. And we can sew over the shoulders just like that. And there you go. We have our basic potato sack that is created for our jacket here. So I'm just going to simulate, as you can see, just to close it up together. And there you go. We're done with our shirt. That is all the class for today, folks. No, that's a joke, of course. No, this is just a starting point, but it gives us a chance to build a garment directly within a 3D window, which I think is really, really, really fantastic. So, okay, so those styline editing tools, I'm so excited to use those. So we will find them right here within our 3D toolbar right here. In fact, I'm just going to close here the library. We don't need that for now. Let's just close it completely. So yeah, our styline editing. There's no, as you can see, there's no default shortcuts to this. I assume that very quickly I will want to use particular shortcuts for these, but for now we can just click manually on these and explore those ourselves. We can also detach this. I don't know whether that's a new feature 12 or 11, but it's really cool that we can actually detach a little menu here. So worst case scenario, we can always just keep it here if we don't want to play around with shortcuts yet. Anyway, so styline editing, that allows us to do changes to our garments within the 3D window directly. As far as I could see, they're all very, very useful, but the one that I've kind of gravitated towards the most right now is just this edit styline that is right here. And this simply allows us to take points within the 3D window and just move them. So I can actually move, as you can see, I can move this particular line towards the bottom here, and it's just going to do the changes that needs to be changed to the garment pieces to conform the garment to the changes that I'm doing within the 3D window. And the fact that it is doing those changes to multiple patterns at any one time, you know, as you can see here, this particular pattern here, this pattern piece has gotten a little bit shorter. This one has gotten a little bit longer. It is fantastic. It makes editing patterns so much easier within Marvelous Designer 12. So I'm very, very excited about the future of Marvelous Designer simply based upon this particular feature alone. In this particular case, so I do want to start to create a better collar here, of course, so that she can breathe a little bit better and not feel constrained by this potato sack that she has right now. So just editing the style line in this particular case won't be enough because I actually need a point here where we have stopped our seam here. As you can see, if I put my cursor over this particular line here using the edit style line function here, you can see that I am editing the whole curve, which is a little bit too much. So what I want to do is to add one vertex here, pretty much at the end of our sewing line. So what we're going to do, we're going to press B to select our seams. I'm going to select the seam that she has here over the her shoulders. Every time we have a seam somewhere, we always have this tiny little line that crosses the seam somewhere, which tells us on which side is the start and on which side is the end of the seam. So right now, if I want to add a vertex at the end of this particular seam, I want to add a vertex at what is the end of the seam. Selecting my seam, right-clicking on it, and we're going to do add point to pattern on end right there. We could do the same on the back, actually. That wouldn't be a bad idea. So I'm going to select the seam again. And we're going to do the same thing here. Right-click on this particular seam, add point to pattern on end. So now we have an actual vertex that has been added where we have stopped our seam. Let's take our edit styline button here once again. click on the front pattern, click on this little dot that is here, and you can see now that my cursor, actually, if I put my cursor over this particular edge, it is only highlighting the edge from the center point to the vertex that we have now added. So I can take the front here of the shirt, or the vest rather, I can just move it down, as you can see, create a little bit of a V-neck like that. Really wonderful. I can click spacebar yet again to do a simulation, let it all rest, and we can continue editing this particular pattern. Let's do the same on the back. I'm not going to create a V towards the back, but maybe just bring this vertex down here a little bit. Simulate again. We've got a nice curve here towards the back. That's wonderful. The edit style line has given us curves, as you can see on the front and on the back. And perhaps what I would do right now is perhaps try to round out here the opening to the collar here. So once again, using the edit style line here, I can actually click on a curve somewhere and I can edit the curve, as you can see. So it's not just about moving points, but I can also edit the curve here. So I can make this particular curve here look a little bit rounder, perhaps. I can also take the back here and do kind of the same thing. Try to really round this out here. And then perhaps continue tweaking this here. Let's take this point, moving inward a little bit. And just keep on tweaking this particular curve until I'm getting something that's nice and round. Now, as we want to sketch out this particular garment, we're not going to be overly worried about getting the exact curves 100% everywhere. I think I'm actually quite happy with this right now, so pretty good. We could take this point, move it a little bit further inward so that it's sitting nicely over the trapezius. So why don't we go ahead and do that here. And there you go. Every time I'm just doing changes, re-simulating a little bit. And this just allows me to just work in a very, very intuitive manner. So I find this absolutely wonderful. The other features that we have, if we can just talk about those very quickly here, but we will spend more time to play around with those as it goes. But just to do a presentation of those 4 different style line features that are here. Scale here allows us to take an opening. So let's say the opening here that is at the bottom of our future coat here. I can take it and I can scale it up or down, and it will have, as you can see, it's going to change within the 2D pattern window. It's going to change pretty much everything that it needs to do to make the opening to this particular, I guess it's a shirt right now. Let's call it a shirt. To make this particular opening to the shirt wider near the base there. So it makes, or rather what would be the hem in this particular case. It makes all the changes that it needs to do to make that happen to all of the connected patterns. So that is an absolutely, absolutely wonderful tool. I could make, at the same time, could make the collar wider, could make the collar narrower. And it's just very, very intuitive to use. Let me just revert here the changes. I don't actually want to make this as wide as it was, but we can do it. And that's really, really cool. The Move Style Line button that is right here allows us to take an edge, an open edge somewhere. So once again, we can take the bottom here of the shirt and we can either move it up or move it down. So make it longer, make it shorter. And same thing happens. You can see all the changes get propagated to all of the different patterns that we have within our 2D window automatically. Finally, the Draw Style Line button allows us to add cuts within our garment directly. So I could cut, let's say, from here all the way to this part here, perhaps. You can see I can just add a cut like that. Very, very simple. It cuts and sews the garment where it needs to. within our 2D pattern window. If I press B here, you can see that there's even a seam here that has been curated. So absolutely wonderful tools. I love these. They make sketching out garments within Marvel's Designer very, very nice, very intuitive, which, to be honest, even makes me question whether there's even a need for the pipeline that I have outlined previously within Outgang of sketching out a garment within ZBrush and afterward doing all the steps required to integrate that afterward within Marvel's Designer. For me, there's a lot of garments now that can just be created straight within Marvel's Designer, and we don't even need to work with external software. So I find that fantastic. It also makes me realize that I probably will have to re-record a lot of classes on Outgang, but hey, that's the nature of these constant updates to softwares, and I would rather have it this way than any other way, really. So I'm very, very, very happy to see all of these tools within Marvel's Designer 12. So let's edit this together then. So let's go ahead and start to make this a little bit more fitting to the particular character that we have. So let's go ahead here, take a perhaps move style line. I want to make this a little bit longer, of course, as a coat. So let's go ahead and do that. I, of course, want to make sure that the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt all kind of more or less and perhaps around the waistline here. Here, let's go ahead to edit style line. I'm going to take the center point that is right here, and I'm going to move it down. I'm going to actually kind of create a little bit of a V like this. I think that could actually look pretty cool if I was to do something like that on the front. Let's do that on the back as well. Every time you can see I'm essentially doing changes using these style line editing tools. And then afterward, I'm pressing spacebar to simulate, let the garment rest a little bit. You can't use the styling editing tools while you are simulating. That would be great though, if you could actually do that, but perhaps a little bit unstable. So that is essentially the idea then. We do our changes, simulate, and just do this kind of back and forth. Here, I'm going to have to add another point if I use my edit style line button here over this particular edge that is right here. You can see that once again, the edge that gets edited is the whole edge all the way over to including the arm size. So we need to add a little bit, a point here, just like we have done on the collar there. So once again, within our 2D pattern window, let's press B to select our seam. That is this side seam here. And right click on it, add point to pattern on end. Of course, once again, I am looking to see where the little cross is over my seam so that I know whether I need to add a point to the start or to the end of the seam. We're going to do that on both sides here. Resimulate here, and once I take my edit style line button here once again, you can see that now I am editing only the seam that goes from the bottom of the shirt to the beginning of the arm side here. So I can take this particular point here, perhaps move it down a little bit, give her a little bit more of a breathing room for her shoulders. And let's start shaping a little bit more, perhaps the arm side itself. So because we're trying to build a coat that will be nicely fitted to the character, what we're essentially looking for is to have this particular arm side to be nice and straight. We don't want to have a curve like this that we currently have. So we need to edit the curve of this particular arm side then. I also want at the same time to take the point here that is right here and move it higher on the shoulder. Somewhere about here or so. That should be pretty good. And then afterward, take the curve that is here, again with the edit style line button, and try to make it nice and straight. So I'm just bringing this curve in here. I'm just straightening it out, and we're gonna do that in both the front and on the back here. So see, like doing these kind of changes in Mars Designer 10 or 11 would require us to do these changes directly within the 2D pattern window. But because of this style and editing feature, we can now do this within the 3D window. And I find that extremely, extremely cool. So we're just going to continue to shape our arm side here, try to get something that is nice and round. And let's see how far we can get with this without having to do any changes within our 2D pattern window directly. Let me check quickly. Press Alt 7 to see what is the stretch map, see if there's any kind of intense stretching going on anywhere. There is a little bit around the neck, as you can see, so around the shoulders. So let's see what we can do about that. Perhaps try to make the edit perhaps this curve that is here, try to make it a little bit bigger. See if there's a way to release a little bit of that tension that is there. Of course, I mean some of that does come from the fact too, of course, that the garment is resting over her shoulders. So obviously the gravity will make it so that we will have a little bit of tension here, no matter what. So this is probably fine for now. And yeah, that's probably as good as we're gonna get it for now. Of course, we always will have a few folds that are appearing just because of the nature of the fabric right here. It's a 2D piece of fabric that is wrapping on a 3D shape. So of course, we'll have some folds somewhere. Making the front here a little bit further down. Here I could play here with the curve. If I want to have something that's creates a little bit of a point like this, a little bit of a geometric point. That's one of those where I probably will have to edit the pattern directly within our 2D window. But you can see here, actually, even with these style and editing tools, I can actually kind of make this a little bit more angular, perhaps. So that's kind of cool, actually. I don't need yet to go within our 2D pattern window to do those changes. And perhaps do the same here on the back if I want to get this to look like a bit of a point, an angular point. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. See, so it's actually very easy. Like we've just created here a basic type of camisole, I guess. So it's very, very easy, as you can see, to just use those tools and manipulate the garment within our 2D window. And that's really our 3D window, in fact. That is really, really cool. Now, I'm not going to add the sleeves right away. I actually kind of want to get the basic here. You can see how nice, by the way, this arm size is starting to get here. So I'm very, very happy with that. Before we do actually add any sleeves to this, I'm just going to try to fit the center, perhaps, of the garment to the character a little bit better. So there's a lot of bagginess here towards the back, of course. If I press Alt 4 here, I will go within transparency view. And you also press Alt 7 to get rid of the stretch map. So of course, we have to remove a lot of the mass here that is on the back if we want to have something that's nicely fitted. And on the front too, we need to look into this here. So pretty much all female garments that are nicely fitted have something that we call a princess seam, which is just a seam that runs on the front of the character and crosses over the boobs. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not the best language to use, but that is what it is, really. So we want to add that princess seam so that we can actually get the front of the shirt to be a little bit more fitted to the character there. So that's where we can use our draw style line button that's right here. And actually, I'm going to press Alt 4 again to be in transparency mode here. So we're going to add our princess theme. We could start it anywhere, really. There's no rule that says where this particular princess theme starts. We could even have a dart if we only wanted to have just some type of incomplete cut through the garment. But in this particular case, the only thing that is important is that this particular princess theme crosses over the boobs, over the center of the boobs. That's really the important part. But it doesn't matter where it starts. We could actually build this in any kind of other way that we want here. So I'm gonna start from the shoulders here, and we're just gonna keep here. I'm gonna press a few times here to control this curve as we go down. And I'm just going to cross here over the center of the breasts, and we're going to go towards the edge where the hem is. And there you go. We have just cutted out our princess seam. I'm going to simulate here again, and you can see what it looks like. Very, very cool. We want to edit this curve now, so let's go with an edit style line. And I just want to try to get this curve to be as straight as I possibly can get it to be. Pretty happy with that. If I want to, I could, there's a little bit of a curve here. I don't really mind that. But of course, we always have the option of taking the point that is here, moving it towards the outside perhaps a little bit, as you can see, and it does all the changes that it needs to all of the garments that are connected together. So once again, fantastic tool. I love this tool. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good to me. I'm very, very happy with that. And let's do the same on the back, actually. So what's pretty common over the back is actually to, as opposed to have a seam that starts from the shoulder and makes all of its way down, is to actually have a seam here. If I use the draw style line button right here, once again, a seam that starts from kind of the midpoint here of the arm side. If we look at it from the back there, so somewhere around here, it kind of curves to more or less follow the shape of the scapula here, and then curves towards the bottom here. So let's do the same thing. We're going to add a seam that more or less looks kind of symmetrical with the one that is happening on the front for the most part, but as opposed to connect to the shoulder directly, this particular seam now curves where our scapula is until it reaches more or less the mid height of our arm side. And so we have all the seams that we need, and we can now start to edit this pattern a little bit better so that we are getting a garment that fits a little bit better. If we press Alt 4 here to look at our garment with transparency, you can see we still have that bagginess that is there. So we want to try and edit that out as much as we can. Also, while we're there, perhaps we could actually edit this particular style line, try to get rid of a little bit of the curve that is here. Not strictly necessary, but we could try. See what can I do with that. See, if I just move this curve here inward a little bit, I can get a line here that is a little bit straighter. So I kind of like that. I like to keep these pieces as geometric as they can be, really. And now what we want to do is to start to remove a lot of the fabric that is over the back. And what we want to do is to press Alt 4 just to see where's the angle change happening here on the back of the character. So in terms of height, we're sort of going from this this kind of concave curve that we have over the body. We more or less change direction at here. That's kind of like the deepest point of the back here. So I kind of want to create a bit of an angular line for the garment. I want the garment to nicely follow the back of the character there. So what we need to do is to remove some of the fabric here on the horizontal axis, so that having less fabric here will force the garment to be closer to the body. That's also called a dart. When we do that, when we want to remove part of the fabric within the patterns that already exist. Although technically this won't be a dart because we're going to remove fabric in between these two panels that are here. But had we not separated out the back, we could do the same by adding a dart in here, kind of a diamond cut through the fabric and then closing the fabric together. So that might be a little bit hard to do with the style line editing because I can't just take this particular seam here and then try to move it closer. You can see yes, it will make, let's say, this kind of back panel here, this one here, it's going to make it shorter, but it's also going to make the other one longer, which we don't actually want in this particular case. But what we can do here is just within our 2D pattern window, first of all, delete the seam that is there. And then afterward, press X to add a few points here. So what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to press Alt 4 to go within transparency mode. And I'm going to add a point that is somewhere around the same height as the back of the character. So here it should actually be a little bit lower than this. So I've added 1 point on one side here on one panel. If I actually select the panel again and I click on Edit Style Line, I can actually see where the point is now. So that's really, really wonderful. If I press Alt 4 again, I can see transparency mode. And so I can see where this particular point has been added. And you can see it's been added pretty much at the exact height that it needs to be there. So now I can press X again, and I can add a point that will be symmetrical to that on the other garment, on the other panel. Unfortunately, this kind of always gets out of edit style line mode here within our 3D window. So I'm just going to click on this again, click on where my point is, click on one panel just to see where the points are. It would be fun to always see where the points are actually within the 3D window and not have to constantly go back and forth within the style line editing mode, right? That is right here. Fortunately, we don't have a feature that is at our disposal where we can always have the points to be visible, unfortunately. There's no options in here to do that. Showing topology doesn't do it. So yeah, unfortunately, there's no button that we can click on to always be able to see the points within our 3D window, unfortunately. But yet again, if we click on Edit Style Line, we can see where the points are. So the points that we have added here, this point here on the back panel is a little bit lower, but that's fine. That's, I think, within well within tolerance of what we want to do here. Of course, if we wanted to have this point be at the exact same height, we could always add, if we just do it here just for the sake of it, okay? What I could always do here is just press M to add a free sewing line. On the first panel on which I have added my point, I can press M to go within free sewing, add a free sewing there that goes from the hem all the way to the point that I have added. And then afterward, complete this free sewing so that it is just like so that we have the same sewing length on both sides. Press B afterwards, select the seam that I have added, right click on it, and do an add point to pattern on end. So this will give us the point that is exactly at the same height. But let's keep in mind we are trying to sketch out a garment right now, so we want to be moving fairly quickly. So whether you decide to do that or not, or just to kind of eyeball where the other point would be, as we have done before here, if I press X and add a point, should be somewhere around here. So a little bit lower than that. It's okay if your points don't always 100% overlap. That is well within the margin. So that's okay. Choose whichever approach that you want. Anyway, so the other thing I want to do is to perhaps add a point where the garment here starts to become in contact with the back of the character, because the top of this particular seam is already where I want it to be. So I kind of want to add another point at about this height here. So yeah, right there. See where the garment starts to leave the back of the character and starts to float within the air. I want to add another point right here. And once again, I will add it fairly symmetrically, just like so. I think I've gotten it exactly actually to match 100% in terms of height. So that's wonderful. This point is exactly where it needs to be. So this allows us to create what will be essentially a bit of a diamond cut through the garment, or what would otherwise be called a dart. And now we can use our edit style in here button once again. Select perhaps this particular panel that is right here. Select this particular garment, take this point here, move it inward, just like so. Take the point that is symmetrical to that, also move it inward so that we get something that is nice and symmetrical. I will actually select these curves and I will get rid of all of the curved points on those, because I don't want this to curve. I actually want this to be nice and angular here. So let's select these. Let's right click on these edges and let's do a delete all curve points, just like that. Of course, if I simulate now, the garment's gonna come apart. But now we want to add the seams that we need to add to complete the connection between these panels in the back. So pressing N within our 3D window, let's do a seam that goes from here to here, a seam that goes from here to there, and finally a seam that goes from here to there. Let's simulate again, and there we go. So now this is getting nicely fitted. Let's still look at our strain map, because it could be easy to kind of assume that this is fine. But if we have removed too much fabric using our dart, this will start to become a little bit tight on the back of the character. We don't want that. We don't want tightness in here. We still want this to be nicely fitted, but not necessarily stretched. And you can see there's a little bit of stretching going on here. So perhaps I can, once again, I won't be able to really do this using the edit style line here. So within our 2D window here, I'm going to press, let's press Z in fact now to go within edit pattern. I'm just going to take these points. I'm just going to move them inward just a little bit, just to reintroduce a little bit of fabric that we have removed using this dart here. And that's pretty good to me. And if we look at our arm side yet again, so from front view, this looks nice and straight. Perhaps this particular point here, the point of the shoulder, we could actually move it outward just a little bit more than this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and click our edit style line button and take the point of the shoulder here and move it outward just a little bit. So there's a little bit more freedom perhaps to connect afterward the sleeve here and have this nice angular change happening to the silhouette. So that's pretty good. On the back, if I want to have a nice arm side that is nice and straight from the point of the shoulder all the way to this particular point here, let's use our edit style line, click on this particular point, move it inward just a little bit, just like that. And once again, as we do that, all the required changes happen to all of the connected panels, which is absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't mind to remove a little bit of this extra fabric that is here that is creating some of these folds. So let's go ahead and do that. Unfortunately, I don't think that the edit style line buttons will allow us to do this here. If I take the scale here and I do a scale, it's going to scale the whole arm side, which is not what we want. And so pretty much the only thing that we can do here, I suppose if we wanted to be fancy, we could press B, delete this particular seam, delete the seam that is here, use the scale style line, take this particular edge now, and since it is disconnected from the rest of the arm side, you can see that only this particular edge now, from the point of the shoulder all the way to the point here that we have on the back here, gets highlighted. So now I could actually scale this down if I wanted to. But this does introduce perhaps more clicks than what we would want. But it is a way to do it. Let's press N again, sew from here to here, and then sew from here to there. And there you go. That's already a little bit better. So we could do it like this, or we could, of course, simply use our standard editing tools within the 2D window. Take this particular point that is here, move it just a little bit further down. This also gives us, as you can see, an arm side that is a little bit nicer. Here I could use my edit style line here. So there's a little bit of a point here you can see on the back panel. Maybe I can actually get rid of that using the edit style line. Select the back panel here. Perhaps if I can move this curve here upward a little bit, just like that. You can see I can actually edit out a little bit of this point that was there. But of course, we can always go back to our 2D window as well. Press Z here within our 2D window. Select this particular curve here. Select the Bezier handles that are there. And just make sure that we have a nice round curve. So that works too, of course. So before we add the sleeves, I think it would be important to make sure that we remove as much as possible the stretching that we have everywhere over this particular garment. The more elements that we add to this particular garment, the more we'll have to deal with these kind of little stretching zones in different places. And it will make it harder and harder the more elements that we add to the garment to afterward get rid of these zones of stretching there, or at least to minimize them. So I really want to address these things before we go any further. We have a little bit of stretching here, and there's a little bit more here actually. So under the armpit right here, this gets kind of red orange-ish, so I kind of want to address that as well while we're there. For the front, maybe we'll do the same. I guess we'll see. And I would like to also reduce these kind of transverse sort of diagonal folds that she has over the side of her rib cage there, just to get something that is even more properly fitted, so that this really starts to look like a coat as opposed to look like a shirt. So let's do that together, and once we've addressed that, then afterward we'll move into creating the sleeves there. Okay, so for this here, it's really just a question of how do we need to manipulate these different patterns to add a little bit of looseness or to remove a little bit of looseness in different places until we get something that is fitting just right for the character there. So in this particular case, we have a lot of stretching here. Vertically speaking, I don't think there's anything wrong here, but the piece that's right here, I think this particular piece here definitely needs to be widened somehow a little bit so that there's just a little bit more space for the scapulas there. And also, of course, this particular character, her thoracic cage is obviously a little bit wider than her waist is. So obviously we want the garment to also reflect that. We want the garment to be a little bit wider towards the top and to become narrower as we go towards the waist area, which is of course why we have added those diamond cuts in the back. But it would be useful to maybe also see if we can get the same thing going on to the side of the character there. And perhaps over the front too, although I think the front should probably stay actually as a bit of a line here. Um, but certainly for the side here, it would be very beneficial to also have a little bit of a diamond cut that is running through the side seam there that is kind of built in there so that we also remove a little bit of that fabric that is on the side of the thoracic cage there. Okay, so that's a lot of little changes that need to be done, but essentially we'll do the same thing as we have done before. We'll just add points, start to just shape this particular garment panel here in a way that's a little bit different. In terms of height, we can probably match the same height as the point that we have created on the other side. So let's see where this actually winds up here. So yeah, that's pretty good. Actually, a little bit lower wouldn't be a bad idea now that I look at it. So maybe about here or so. Yeah, that's pretty good where this particular point is. We can do the same thing. Um, we could add a point here that is symmetrical in whichever way that we want to, of course, as we have talked about before. But considering the fact that these two segments have the exact same length, I can just press X here, add a point to the other side, and there you go. They are overlapping. Don't need to try to calculate that in ways a little bit more fanciful than that. Okay, so what we essentially want to do is to here I will actually just delete the curve points from these segments to make sure that these are kind of nice and angular. And here, so we want to, once again, these aren't the kind of changes we can do these with the style line because these are sewed together. So if I move one of these points using the style line, it's going to stretch the other panel, which is not what I want to do here. So I need to do these changes within the 2D pattern window. Let's take this point then. So I've pressed Z here to go within edit pattern. Let's take this point, move it inward a little bit, move this one here inward a little bit, and then we'll take these points here, at least this one here on the other side. Yeah, it could be useful to do it on the other side as well. Let's make these wider, in fact, so that we build in a little bit more width around the thoracic cage so that she has a little bit more of a breathing room in there. Quite literally there. There we go, just like that. One thing I could do if I don't actually want to disturb this particular curve that's here, one thing I could do maybe is just press X, add one point here, because you can see when I take this point and I move it further towards the left, right? I'm actually kind of disturbing this particular curve that is there. And I don't actually want to do that. So, a few things I could do maybe is maybe take this particular edge, do an offset pattern outline, kind of push this out, just like this, grab this particular point, move it towards the left. Or what I could do is also just press X, add a point here, which will allow me afterward to grab this point and move it. And now I can extend, as you can see, the edge here, the segment, the edge of the panel without actually destroying this particular curve that is here. So this allows me to build in just a little bit more of that, just a little bit more fabric here. And then after this point, actually, I kind of want to move it down a little bit. And I want to move it down here actually because just a little bit like this here, because I actually want to keep this particular corner here at 90 degrees. That's quite important to me because I want both panels here Like this should be a right angle seam and both panels that meet here. So both this panel and this panel here should both meet at 90 degrees, if that makes any sense there. So that's also one thing that I want to pay attention to here. I probably really don't have to put in a lot of fabric here, so maybe even just make this here a little bit smaller here. I really don't think that a lot of fabric is necessary. I think a little bit will go a long way. Yeah, I mean, I could do the same thing. Choose your approach that you want. I guess here I'll just select this particular edge here and do a offset pattern outline on this one. And then this vertex here, I'll just delete it really so that we wind up having a triangle of fabric that we have just added here. And so same thing, let's move this one here a little bit inward. And yeah, so let's resimulate and see what happens. All right. If I look at our stretch map, we've gotten rid of all of the stretching that was here. And there's actually a little bit less of these folds here, but we could maybe even push this a little bit further. Let's see how far we can actually push this. So if I take these points here, move this one here a little bit further inward yet again, simulate again. And see, as I'm doing this, it's making this particular panel tighter and tighter to the body. Yeah, okay, so about these points that are here, as I said, I want to keep them at 90 degrees. So I actually want to take this particular point here, move it down a little bit so that I wind up having something here that is at 90 degrees. This side, on this side too, extreme precision is not necessary. But as you can see, when you look within the 3D pattern window, this is actually kind of what we're expecting, right? We're expecting both segments. So these two panels, we're expecting the two segments here that create the arm side to meet in the middle and to create this nice 90 degrees seam in between those. And we want the line that continues from one panel to the other one to be nice and straight. So that's pretty good. And then I suppose we could take these points here and convert them to curve points. It's gonna get us rid of the Bezier curves that are there if we do that, but that's okay for me. We don't need to necessarily keep these as Bezier curves. So very tiny change there, not all that necessary. Anyway, okay, so that's pretty good. Okay, so this is more better fitted to the character there. I think I want to get rid of this here. And also the back here, the back seam, you can see it's kind of sticking out a little bit. Has a bit of a weird kind of curve to it that right now I don't actually like. So let's get rid of this here. Let's try to get this particular line to be a little bit closer to the body. And then afterward, let's get rid of this here, this little fold that's here. And we'll be good to add the sleeves afterward. Let's actually start with this. We did some work on this previously, but I'm not all that happy with it. I really think this could be better there. Truth be told, this probably doesn't need that much of a change. It's just the put these two patterns right next to each other here. We do get a nice continuous curve, which I do like. But I think this could probably do something like this here. Press X here, add 1 point here, add 1 point there, take this vertex here, delete it, and maybe do the same thing here. So I'm doing this once again, instead of taking these points and moving them manually, because as I'm doing that, I am changing the whole curve, which I don't want to do. I want to preserve as much of the curve that is there as I can, but I just want to remove a little bit of a little bit of a triangle like this. And yeah, see that That gives me something that's pretty good here. We could try to edit this further, of course, try to make this even smaller. Maybe remove just a little bit of the fabric here, a little bit of the fabric there. But I'm fine with that. That's within tolerance as far as I'm concerned. So happy with this. Um, I suppose once again here, we can convert these to curve points, just like so. Okay, very happy with that. So for this here, so what's going on there? So we have this kind of unsightly fold that is created here, and some of that probably comes from the fact that this, like, if we look at this curve here within our 2D pattern window, it doesn't quite match what we are kind of getting here. So my feeling is that this curve here right now, well, it just doesn't have the right curve, for lack of a better term. The fact that it kind of has a very different shape in 3D here, the fact that we're getting a little bit of extra fabric here means that there's probably a little bit of fabric that needs to be removed here. So there's that. I also wonder if we should move the princess seam further towards the outside so that the side panel has a little bit less of a, I suppose, a 3D-ness to it, right? Because right now it is pushing up against, or rather, the breasts are pushing up against it, which means that it is kind of creating a area of tension here, and from that we are getting these radially emanating folds out of that. So, by the way, we do have a class on fold anatomy on the website. So I do recommend that you watch that if the term area of tension is not quite clear for you what that actually means there. So I think, I don't think it would be a bad idea to take this princess seam and move it towards the outside, actually. So let's actually do that here. So with our edit style line there, then let's take this princess seam and let's just move it towards the outside. And if I look to maybe make this seam as straight as I can, I could actually get rid of a little bit of the curve that is happening towards the top there. So with our edit style line function then, let's select this particular point and let's try to move it towards the outside. Although if I do that, you can see that it's editing the whole princess seam, which may not be that good of an idea. So once again, let's press X within our 2D pattern window, add 2 points here, which allows me afterward to grab this particular vertex, move it out, and I am only changing the top of the princess seam. There you go, nice and straight. That looks pretty good. And all the changes, all the required changes have been done to all of the panels after that. Right, if I take this one here and I rotate it, it's not a bad idea sometimes just to check your seam lengths like these. Just to put two panels that are joined together side by side and simply eyeball to see whether you have the same length for your different segments. Of course, you could also look at the measurements. You could press Shift Z to look at the measurements. Clearly, this one here is 5.45. This one is 5.19. But sometimes just eyeballing it, I kind of like to do that too. So anyway, let's try to make these segments to be the same length as much as possible. So that's pretty good here. 4.63, 4.63. That's perfect. All right, so our princess seam is a little bit straighter. I think we could probably, yeah, I think there's a way to actually get rid of the tension that is here around the collar. That's probably coming from the fact that the opening to the collar, this here, so these segments here is actually a little bit too tight for her. So perhaps trying to introduce a little bit more fabric in there would allow us to get a collar that's a little bit better fitted here. So once again, I'm going to use the technique of adding a point, and then selecting afterward the vertex that is that I want to extend, and just move it outward a little bit, just like that. And also, as I do it, I can't just move it like that here because once again, I want to keep these at 90 degrees. These seams, I want them to be at 90 degrees versus the edge of the garment. So as I take this out, I also have to kind of move it in a direction that will always keep this particular corner at 90 degrees as much as possible. And let's do the same on the other side. Resimulate again. See, I have gotten rid of some of that tension that was there. So let me check the collision distance on the avatar, because this might be using the default values of 3 millimeters, which is a little bit too high for me. So let's just select the avatar, go within our properties. So hotkey list, we can get rid of that. We're not using that now. So let's go within property editor. And let's check the collision distance on this, which is, or rather the skin offset, as you can see, which is set to 3 millimeters right now. A little bit too high for me. I like to keep this at 1, so that the garment floats a little bit less on top of the carrot there. And yeah, so that also allows us to get a collar that fits better, by virtue of there being less of a distance between the avatar and the actual garment. So now we just have to get rid of this kind of little bump here that we have. That's not all that great to look at there. So let's take this particular point, convert it to curve point, and then let's press V to go within curve point edit mode. And let's take the curve points that have been added. So we had Bezier curves. The Bezier curves have been converted to curve points. Let me take now these curve points and just take this particular point, move it inward a little bit, just like that. That's just going to allow me just to keep a nicer curve here that doesn't have that little bump that we had there. This particular point here, I think we can just convert it to curve point, and that's probably going to be all that we need here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Back to this then. What can we do with this particular fold that is here? So that's like, of course, adding a dart here would allow us to get rid of some of this fabric. I'm not sure I want to add a dart there. This particular princess seam, we could actually, as opposed to have it go all the way up the shoulder, we could take the princess seam and could actually rotate it so that it goes, as opposed to go all the way up the shoulder, we could rotate it so that it goes right here. So I have a princess seam that's kind of a bit of at an angle there, which will actually kind of mimic what's happening on the back, but will be lower on the character. That would be a way to get rid of a little bit of the fabric, because having the seam here would allow us to just tweak a little bit the sides, the segments that create the seam itself, so that we could get rid of a little bit of the fabric here. It's not that bad of an idea. Ultimately, too, I want to add more seam to this in different places, because I want to make this a coat that has some nice, interesting seams that are kind of designed in an interesting way. So I'm not against the idea of adding an extra seam there. That might be all that we can do, really, about this. Okay, let's go with the draw style line here. Kill the simulation, draw style line. Let's draw a style line that goes from right here all the way there. This cuts through our pattern. And in turn there, then I can perhaps add a point here, add a point there, take these two vertices, delete them. The consequence of which, as you can see, is that now we have removed, in a very targeted way, a little bit of fabric from the side panels here for the torso. So we now have this extra seam, and the question is, do we want to keep it now or not? Which is an interesting one. Well, I mean, I definitely want to keep that. The question is, do I want to keep the rest of the princess seam then? That's the interesting question. It might not be necessary to keep the princess seam. I mean, once again, we can keep it just for design purposes. We don't like if we want to, if we're worrying about creating a design that we like, we can keep it, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no wrong answer here as to whether we want to keep it or not. I think I want to get rid of it now, just to have a base that is as simple as I can before we start to add cuts for the express purpose of design. I think right now I actually want to get a simple garment that fits the best that it can fit. So I kind of like the idea of getting rid of the princess seam, or rather the this particular seam that is over the kind of goes over the pectoralis, the clavicle, and up to the shoulder there. I like the idea of getting rid of it for now. Ultimately, we might actually want to add it back just for design purposes. But right now, I'm not actually sure design wise where I want to go with this, right? So actually, I kind of like the idea of just having something that fits very nicely, is nicely fitted first as a base, get rid of all the kind of fitting issues that we have, and then afterward to talk about how do we design something that's kind of cool with this. So let's go ahead and take this particular seam. Let's do a merge on this. By the way, for some reason, I did not have linked editing anymore. Marvel's designer is like, nope, I'm not doing this with linked editing. Okay, let me just take this here, just rotate it back so that it's nice and centered. Take the middle line here. Let's do a cut and sew. Let's take both panels, left and right one. Let's do apply linked editing, symmetric pattern with sewing, which more or less gets us to the exact same place in the sense that these are now symmetrical. The changes that we do to one panel will be carried symmetrically across, but we don't have that symmetry line anymore, which in this case might actually allow us to merge this. Yeah, there you go. On both sides with only one operation. Simulate here yet again. And yeah, as you can see, it hasn't changed anything as far as the fit is concerned. And then finally, I suppose we can take these points here. These don't have to stay as angular points. So if we convert them to curve points, let's see what happens. Yeah, it's pretty good. I think that's gonna work nicely. So I kind of like it. Starting to feel like as if the side seam here should be a little bit further so that we get a roundness here that is more and more symmetrical. So let's go ahead and take this point here, move it towards the back here using our edit style line function. Resimulate here. Yeah, it's getting pretty good. A little bit more, and then a little bit further down. Let's try to tweak this curve here. There you go. Nice and round. Very happy with this. I think this will give us very, very nice sleeves. Yeah, cool. Super happy with this. You can see now the middle here, it's kind of sticking out here in a way that's kind of ugly. So I can try to address that. So these are these the symmetry line that we have here. So there too, same thing. I could probably add 1 point here, take this point afterward, delete it, resimulate. Make sure my seam goes from point to point, of course. And there you go. That's nice and flat now. And overall, we're getting an arm side that very nicely, perfectly goes all the way around the arm. So I'm very, very happy with that. Like, it could be tempting to get the arm side even closer to the armpit, but once again, if we do that, I think it's going to make a garment that's probably going to be very uncomfortable to wear. So I would actually rather keep that a little bit. I think I don't want to get rid of that completely. Let me see if there's a way to introduce a little bit more looseness towards the back, actually. So this particular style line, this particular line here, I just curve it just like that a little bit. There you go. It's a little bit more freedom of movement here as well. Once again, we have a little bit of stretching here. We had gotten rid of some of it, but clearly there's still some stretching here. So this is on the back panel. And then, as we said, we also want to flatten out this particular seam here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's take this particular pattern here. Let's press Shift Z, get rid of the measurements here, and re-rotate it. Re-rotate this so that it's nice and vertical within our 2D pattern window. And so what we want then is, first of all, there's a very gentle curve here. Let me get rid of it. So select this particular segment here, right click on it, do a delete all curve points, which has, as you can see now, flattens out this seam. And we need to add a little bit more horizontal fabric here so that there's a little bit more breathing space in there. So can perhaps take this point here, move it just like so. Add a little bit more width to this. And I think this seam might actually be a little bit too high now. It might have shifted a little bit there. This particular point here, I really want it to be more or less at the midpoint of the shoulder from the back. So right now it's a little bit too high. Let's do edit style line, take it, move it downward a little bit. Perhaps adjust this curve in the process. Simulate again. Yeah, now it's placed where I want it to be placed. So the changes I've done has actually crashed Marvelous Designer, but thankfully I had saved this very, very recently, so I really haven't lost that much work here. But let's see where things are now if we simulate the garment here. Yeah, so, well, I mean, we can see overall the fit is really, really good, right? The only thing that we really need to get rid of then is just to flatten this particular seam out there. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how much work I've lost, but it doesn't seem to be that much here. But one thing I want to do is just to tweak, get some, just get these curves to look better. I'm kind of tempted. This might be dangerous, but I will do it regardless. Let me actually just, I could press V here and just edit these curve points and get the curve that I want. Or one thing I can do, and once again, I think it's kind of dangerous to do it, but let's just try it. See what happens. Take these two segments, delete their curve points entirely, which will make these kind of completely straight. As long as my designer does not crash in the process, of course. Delete all curve points. Here we go. And then see if I press C. See if I press C. Haha. Just to take these curves afterward. Let me also perhaps convert these two curve points here. So press C, take this particular curve, and try to recreate the curve here using only what will be Bezier handles, which just gives me a nicer curve overall. Yeah, that's pretty good. See, I kind of like that. And the extra fabric that we have here comes from this kind of angular point that we have. So let's try to get rid of that here. Let me add 2 points here. Take these afterward, convert them to curve points. Take all the curve points here, delete them. In fact, I kind of want to convert this to curve point 2, get rid of these curve points just to have a nice straight line like this. And then hopefully I can do the same thing on both sides. Trying to get a little bit of folds like these, and I think this comes from probably seams that are too long on both sides. Yeah, and if I take a look at this seam here, there's a 2 centimeter difference there. So that's not great, which means that we want to perhaps remove about 2 centimeters right here. It feels like a very big change, but let's see where it leads us. And what about these seam here? So these seam here, almost the same length. Okay, let me get rid of all these seams here. Actually, these seam here, I want to keep them from point to point. I don't want to change that here. But so now, if I, let's say, do a M-to-N segment sewing, so Shift N, M-to-N segment sewing here, press enter, press on the other side, press enter. This gives us the best possible distribution for these seams. So now the seam difference actually is negligible. So to get rid of this here, which is pretty much the last thing I need to do to get this to fit otherwise perfectly, we could take a look at the collar here once again. I know we're starting to get bogged down into fitting, which I kind of didn't want to do necessarily, but I think this is useful. So let's actually continue. Okay, so essentially, the fact we have few folds here for me does suggest that we don't have the fit that we need, and probably comes from the fact that these. If we take a look at these here, right? So these, and if I activate transparency here, which I actually forget the shortcut of, and if there even is one within the 2D pattern window here. So if I do translucent surface, we can see that these two curves really don't match all that great. So this curve here is probably a little bit too generous. Let's reduce it here. All the while, I want to take a look at our segment lengths or our string lengths. Make sure that they are always as close as they can be of the same length on both sides. Every time that we get a bunch of folds somewhere like these, it means that there is too much fabric perpendicular to the fold. We can see that this seam here, we have a length that is different on both sides, and the seam that is on the back panel has 1.5 centimeter too much there. So yeah, one thing I could maybe do, okay, maybe just add an internal line here, just like so. Cut through the back panel. Take the seam afterward, do a cut and sew on it, which allows me to independently tweak the top portion from the bottom portion. And what I'm thinking is that maybe I can actually shorten this up here by about 1 centimeter or so near the bottom. All right, so now this is starting to look nice and flat here. So these two pieces are now meeting in a way that's very, very nice. And hell, let's do the same. This particular panel here. Do a cut and sew, just like so. Resimulate it. So get these to match as well as we can get them to match. You can see what we're kind of doing is almost building these geometric kind of like almost hard shapes, you know? It's kind of what we're doing just to get it to be fitting as well as possible. The reason why I'm still tweaking this because I kind of want to get rid of these folds that are here. So the fit is not perfect yet, and this is something I have tendency to do. By the way, just get completely bogged down within these kind of things. A little bit more than what becomes useful at some point. But I appreciate the challenge. But again, this is within tolerance. I don't think anyone would actually look at this and say, "Oh, like you haven't done a proper fitting job there. Yeah. You need to go back and tweak your stuff." Okay, so Let's keep it here. I think this is within tolerance. Okay. All right. I'm not sure I need to necessarily keep these as seams, so let me go ahead and remerge these together. Let's do a merge here. Let's do a merge there. And as I resimulate, you can see now how everything is kind of becoming nicer and perhaps curvier there. So very, very happy with that. Should we bother with this? That's the question. This is can be a little bit obsessive about these things. Uh, but I think this is well within tolerance. So let's keep it like this. Okay. Very happy with this overall. And as we said, maybe you want to revisit the color here quickly. Yeah, look at that. Getting very happy with this. Getting a nice straight line here for the back of the collar. We've gotten rid of the tension that was here. Okay. It's not worth to spend more time on this. The overall fit is very, very good. We really don't have that many folds that really don't belong there. Um, and it's just a little bit of looseness, different places like around the collar, but that's fine. That's all within um, That's all, that's all very, acceptable there. I have gone further than this and what I, actually intended to originally, but that's just my obsessive nature to do that. And, probably also further than you probably need if you're just trying to, like, sketch out a garment with this. Um, but you can see how far you can go to try and make something that is nicely fitted. Of course, if you're making a shirt that's supposed to look a little bit loose, like you're making, I don't know, like a comfortable, cozy shirt that you want a character to wear. If you're making a T-shirt, these sorts of things, you don't have to go to this degree of detail. Of course, this is always based upon what is the intention. How do we want the final garment to look like? So I will admit I've gone too far with this, okay, in the context of a class. And I don't want to spook you into thinking that somehow every pattern that you need, that you do needs to be fitted as perfectly as this. Because once again, this is just my nature to do that. I just like to make clothes that are nicely fitted. But of course, if you just look around you, if you look at the clothes that you wear yourself, it's very likely that most clothes that you wear aren't fitted to this degree of perfection there, right? And we kind of like to have clothes that are a little bit baggy. So don't go as crazy as this if you don't want to, okay? We could have stopped fitting this a while ago, and we could have moved on to the sleeves. This is, as I said, just my own nature, and I feel kind of bad even having to apologize in the middle of the class. But damn it, I had some fun doing it, and I think that the result is great. So I'm not going to apologize too much. Let's move on to the sleeves then. So for the sleeves, what we're going to do is that we're going to build a rectangle that has the dimensions that we expect to have for the sleeve. And then we'll place that sleeve on the avatar using what we call arrangement points. And then after that, we'll tweak the segment of the sleeve that will connect to the arm side until the shape is as close as it can to the shape of the arm side. And then we will sew it all together. So the first thing that I need for my sleeves is to figure out how wide of a sleeve I even need to begin with. So we essentially want a sleeve that will connect all the way around the arm side that we already have here on the torso. So the best thing that we can do really is just to measure how wide of a panel of fabric that we need to be able to wrap around the arm and connect to the arm side directly. So what I'm going to do here, I'm simply going to press Z within our 2D pattern window, and we are going to select all of the segments that comprise the arm side. So this one here, this one, and this one. And we can see here that the length of all of these is 32.76 centimeters. So that's how wide of a panel that I need to be able to create the sleeves, or at least to create the part of the sleeve that will be connected to the torso right here. In terms of length, we could actually measure the whole length of the arm if you wanted to. We could be very, very precise by using the measurements that we have here. We could use a linear measure here, and we could say, okay, like how wide or how long of a sleeve do we need? And well, we can see what the answer is here. It's about 52 centimeters. But that's okay if we just eyeball that too as well. I think the most important thing is just to get the proper width of fabric so that we have a sleeve that nicely connects to the rest of the torso there. But in terms of length, we can easily adjust that later. So once again, here we need a sleeve that will be 32.76 centimeters wide as a panel of fabric that will go all the way around the arm. So let's press S then to go within rectangle creation mode. And let's just create that here. So of course, I could obviously just click here within our 2D pattern window. And then I could input the actual measures that are here, or we can just eyeball it and get just tweak the rectangle of fabric afterward until it is the proper dimensions there. But since I've already clicked, and so why not go for the exact measurements here? So we said here 32.76. That's for the width, or in this case here, that would be, yeah, I guess that would be the width on the horizontal axis, although we will flip this 90 degrees. And then in terms of height here, we're talking about 52 centimeters. So by doing this here, I can have the exact panel that I needed in terms of size. And then afterward here, I can just press A, take this particular panel, hold shift while I click on this little handle here to rotate this so that it snaps here at 90 degrees on the side. So obviously this is one way that we can do it, but the way that I wanted to do it originally was just to press S, create a rectangle here, and then afterward press Shift Z so that I can see within my 2D pattern window